Hi, my name is Stas, and welcome to This Is My Architecture. Today we have Praneet from Peak AI.
Thanks, Stas, for having me here.
Thanks for joining.
My pleasure.
So first, Praneet, tell me a bit more about Peak.
Peak is creating a new category of software product called as AI system or the artificial intelligence system that basically leverages and initiates intelligent actions for all other business software such as CRM or a ERP system. And it acts as a central place of intelligence for between your system of record or system of engagement. Yeah.
So before we jump into the architecture, machine learning is about the people, the algorithms, the processing capabilities, but also, of course, about the data. So could you tell me a bit more about how, first of all, data gets into the system?
Yeah, so Peak has several built-in connectors that can allow you to get data from number of different sources, like a SaaS product, or it could be a data warehouse, or it could be some kind of APIs that you want to send data to our system. So all of this allows getting data into Peak system.
Got it. And does it all go through Kinesis? So I imagine, for example, if there's an API option, I would just talk to an API, it's being pushed to Kinesis. But if you pull a batch from, let's say, a data warehouse solution?
Yeah. So for data warehouse and everything, we have got a direct connector, a JDBC connector, that actually directly connects with any of the data warehouse and pushes data to our S3 over here.
Got it. Cool. So the data will be pulled, pushed to S3, and do you do any, for example, interesting pre-processing on the data before you make it available for?
Yeah, so if we look at this thing, once the data flows into S3 or the data flows into kind of Redshift, depends on the data that you are ingesting, it actually runs several pre-processing proprietary algorithms, such as GDPR.
Oh,
Yeah, and this GDPR algorithm actually helps you to screen a PII or a personal identifiable information data and can actually build out a report for business users or data scientists to analyze and remove all of that extra personal data.
okay, got it. So really interesting. So if I'm a customer, I have a data set, and somehow by mistake I have some maybe customer information that shouldn't be there, that maybe doesn't align well with the GDPR requirements, you'll basically be able to catch that while it's in your data lake environment.
Exactly. So you can very well get all of that data caught up in this data lake environment, and we can choose to anonymize it or even remove that data from the system.
Okay. And how do you really understand what data is, for example, kind of more compliant or less compliant? Is there some unique?
Yeah, so our proprietary GDPR algorithm is built around some of those basics around personal information. So it identifies any kind of personal information such that your address or your name or other things that can actually denote a exact person, or even it can trace through and financial information. So let's take an example of e-commerce where you might have credit card information, so you really don't want to get it to for everyone. So it can very well screen all of that personal information.
Okay, really cool. And so we got the data in.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my kind of data science goggles on, and then let's kind of try to follow maybe the standard process of, let's say, data preparation and data exploration.
Yeah.
So if I'm a data scientist, what do I do now that we have the data in the system?
Yeah, so once you have data into a system, we have got all the tools that you would love, such as Jupyter IDE or R Studio. And this all data you can access through the EMR that sits over here. This EMR has basically Spark running on it.
Yep.
So Spark can talk to any kind of data that is within our system. And over here through SageMaker or through R Studio, you can actually explore the data or do any kind of processing on that data in order to make it fit for machine learning model.
Got it. So for the IDE, basically, I have the choice of Jupyter, probably, via SageMaker or RStudio.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll, for example, in terms of pre-processing or processing, does that happen on EMR?
Yeah, some kind of processing happens on EMR, or some kind of processing might happen through an R or Python script.
Got it.
Basically, a data scientist would love to write a complex R function or a complex Python function in order to do some kind of mutation on data. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's say the data is prepared, if needed, at scale. We will explore the data with one of the IDs. Now it's time to pick an algorithm. Do you have a set of algorithms you offer? Can I bring my own algorithms?
Yeah, so Peak by default gives you a set of standard algorithms that you can use for different use cases. And apart from that, we also allow you to bring your own algorithm. So you can very well bring your own algorithm, do a hyperparameter tuning to it, and you can very well use to deploy it.
Got it. And what's your favorite algorithm?
So my favorite one is XGBoost.
Nice, like it. So we have the algorithm. We need to train the model. Does that happen with EMR as well, or are you leveraging SageMaker?
So it depends on case-by-case basis. So a data scientist never have to worry about it. So in case if he needs a GPU kind of instances, we very well use SageMaker in order to train those models. But if it's a normal computational model, we very well push that to EMR on a Spark cluster in order to train that. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So let's say the model is trained, and now this is a part where I think most data scientists, find it a bit tricky, actually deploying the model to production. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so for deploying a model to production, you can very well use SageMaker if you want to expose that model through an API. So you say, my model is ready, it's trained, you have analyzed it. Great, now put this into a container. It goes into a container, and we give them an option. Do you want to deploy an API on it, or how do you want to invoke your model? So those all things can be very well done through this platform.
Got it. And so if need be, it's a managed process. The model is deployed, and I can access the API to do predictions, for example.
Exactly. So you can do a real-time API predictions, and few of our customers run like 10,000 requests per minute as well.
Oh, that's nice. That's scale. And so we kind of talked about, some of the parts. I'm just wondering about the kind of the whole. So what happens when I need to orchestrate that process and I want to repeat it again in production, both on the training side and maybe the prediction kind of side?
Yeah, great. So what happens is once the data on a real production system flows in every day, and every day you need to predict, it means every day you need to process that data. So PKI system has a workflow builder capability where you can actually set up a pipeline of different operations. So once you can set up a trigger, once the data into a system, run these pre-processing functions, run these processing functions, then put it to my model and give prediction. So all of these things can be very well orchestrated through a workflow builder.
Okay, interesting. So Praneet, I need to get some hands-on with
Definitely.
this system.
Definitely.
got me
Anytime
covered?
you want. Yeah.
Sweet.
Okay. Great.
Well, this was really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for watching. This is my architecture.